Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on Endowus Live. I'm Sheng Shi, and just beside me, we have Lin Sing, who will be the moderator for today's session. Let me just present the slides. Yes, so we will be talking about how you can make better CPF decisions with the Endowus CPF Calculator. So thank you for joining us today on this Wednesday evening to learn more about the most exciting topic, CPF. But jokes aside, please take note that for today's session, please treat it as more of an informative session, right? It's meant to be more educational in nature, right? It's not financial advice. It's a guidance on how you can better look at your managing your CPF, how you can better project your CPF balances, right? So end of the day, we don't have a full picture of your financial circumstances, and even with the very comprehensive information that you're providing us on the CPF calculator, we are not able to, take into account your personal circumstances. So do take note of that. Next week, we have a very, very interesting session on the Q3 market insights as well as the Endowus Advice Portfolio Performance Review. So we have our Chief Investment Officer, Sam, as well as Wei Mei, our Chief Advisory Officer, running through with us what happened in the markets over the last quarter, right, as well as how the Endowus portfolios have done and our market outlook for the rest of 2021. So please join us for that. We have the link for the Eventbrite sign up in the YouTube description below or on the Facebook page. So check that out. We'll be sharing more about how the markets have performed next week. So we are running a SRS sign up promotion for new clients. So scan the QR code, check out the YouTube description. We are offering a very attractive $100 cash rewards on top of the tax savings that you can get from your SRS account, on top of the very low fees that Endowus also have on our platform, right? So do check that out. And for today's session, it's meant to be very, very interactive. So please leave your questions on Slido. We are also running a few polls along the way to gather some feedback on the CPF calculator, as well as to better understand how we can tweak the calculator for your financial and CPF financial planning needs. Okay, so we are going into our first poll. Right. So the question that we'd like to ask the audience is, how CPF literate are you? So, Lin Sing, how do you think you are in terms of CPF literacy?
I would say I'm quite okay. I think definitely after joining Endowus, I'm definitely way more in tune with what's happening with the CPF system. I understand that there is some form of complexity, and I think you'll be talking a bit about it and how we are actually simplifying the entire process of understanding it with our CPF calculator. So really excited to hear what you have to say, Shing Shi.
Yeah. Lin Sing, end of the day, you and the CX team handle a lot of the interactions with our clients. Today on today's session, we have a lot of Endowus clients on board. Where do you think our clients are in terms of CPF literacy, and also what are their main pain points around CPF? Understanding CPF.
I think most of our clients understand or they have a very good impression of CPF, but I think there are some a complexity of the system that they probably are not aware of. Like for example, being able to invest their CPF OA monies. That's something that I come across quite often, and a lot of people are quite surprised that they are able to invest their CPF OA monies with Endowus, right? So that's something that the CX team has often come across. Questions that we often come across is how and when can they invest their CPF OA monies?
Cool, thank you for that. Yeah, so I think based on the the polls that we are running now, most people are moderate, right? They know most CPF concepts. I guess some of the points that we talked through today will be something that is not unfamiliar with them. We have a very huge crowd of CPF newbies as well, so they know barely know anything beyond, the 3 or 4 accounts. So I'll be touching a bit on the different CPF accounts today, and also how, you can use those accounts for your financial goals. Right. And there is also a small group that is CPF experts. So hopefully we are able to, get some more in-depth question about the calculator from them, on the accuracy, on the, on whether, certain CPF, very complex CPF rule is being taken into account. So please, again, leave your question on Slido so that, we can address them. And, it's a lot of, there's a lot of effort put behind the CPF calculator, be it the idealization, the conceptualization, and all the way down to execution. So please ask your questions. Okay, so I will just go straight into today's presentation. Maybe a bit about myself first. So I am the content/personal finance lead of Endowus. So previously I've been working in a totally different sector, right? Unlike Yun Sing, who has some experience in wealth management. So I've previously worked in as an analyst role in a real estate firm, be it the private equity side in CapitaLand, as well as the listed entity side from Capital Data Centers, right? So my work pretty much centers around building spreadsheets for the fund management company, right? So help people understand, whether to buy, sell, or hold a property. And I'm really excited to join Endowus 2 years back, because a very big part of my personal interest, lies around investing and managing money efficiently, right? So how can you, grow all of your wealth well? And that's not centered around, staring at my investment day in, day out, looking at my brokerage account day in, day out. I think what I really care about is treating money as a means to an end, right? How can I manage money efficiently so that I can focus on other things that are important to me, right? Family, my own personal life goals, as well as career, for example, right? So, a big part of my own personal pain points is around how can I manage my CPF better, and how can I understand my CPF better, right? So on the flow of today's session, I will just quickly touch on this. We will be touching on why retirement adequacy is a challenge, why planning CPF well is critical to our financial success, how and why we created the CPF calculator, and I will just run through two scenarios on how you can look at, people broadly look at financial planning around CPF, right? So for a young adult who is probably just starting work, how can they use the CPF calculator for their housing decisions? And for someone who is already, more stable in terms of their financial needs, how can they look at using this calculator to plan for retirement? Then I'll touch on some of the questions on the CPF calculator. Okay, so on the first point, there's a based on the survey that we have done on Endowus, we have launched a survey on the Singapore retirement survey, right? And what the survey has shown is that 39% of Singaporeans are actually not confident about having sufficient money for their retirement, right? And this is even more so for people who are in the sandwich generation, right? Those who are between the age of 35 to 44, they may have to take care of their children, as well as they have to take care of their aging parents. So retirement adequacy is a challenge for all of us, right? If you take a look at the issues around rising property prices, around issues of stagnating pay, right? And when it comes to CPF itself, many Singaporeans are fairly CPF savvy, as shown in the poll just now, right? People are aware of how to use it. So based on our survey, 90+% knows the usage of the different usage of CPF, right? Be it for retirement, investment, education, healthcare, etc. Right? So they are very aware of it, but they are not sure how to use it, and they are not sure, they don't intend to use it, right? So this is something that we find very interesting. So there could be many different reasons for that. I think one reason is probably unfamiliarity on how best to use it. So that is something that we try to address with the calculator, right? 45% of Singaporeans actually have not actively planned for retirement at all. And that is a concern, right? Because time is actually the eighth wonder of this world, right? If we are able to start planning earlier, we start drawing out the broad plans and get our feet wet with investing, managing our CPF better, then that could have a huge impact further down our life, right? And one very interesting insight from CPF board itself in their 2020 annual report, 36% of active CPF members, right, they were not able to reach the full retirement sum in 2020, right? So the CPF full retirement sum is actually, what could be considered a baseline requirement for a certain level of retirement income that you can get, right? So for those people who managed to hit FRS at 2020, right, they will be able to get a retirement income of around $1,300 when they reach 65 years old. Right, and you can imagine that $1,300 would probably barely cover some expenses around medical bills, around normal standard of living, like around food, transportation, etc. Right. So only 64% are able to hit FRS. So these are, there is a concern around retirement adequacy and sufficient retirement income. So why planning CPF wealth is important for us to address some of these concerns around retirement adequacy, around our financial plans. So a big part of our income actually goes into CPF, right? So for myself, when I first started work, I didn't know that there's a lot of money that goes into CPF because 37% of it actually is taken away from our the amount that's shown in our bank account when we first receive our paycheck, right? And if you were to add in the employer's contribution as well, it grows up to be a huge amount of money, right? And it's not just your monthly basic salary, but it's also your bonus as well, right? So a huge part of the income actually goes into CPF. The 17% that we are talking about here, the 20%, all of it, it can add up to a sizable amount, and it's actually split into three different key buckets of our wealth, right? So for the ordinary account, you can think of it as the most flexible account, a high yield savings account. Essentially, you can use it for the most purposes, right? Housing, insurance, investment through CPF IS, as well as education funds for yourself or even for your loved ones, right? For MediSave, it serves as a form of like a medical emergency fund. You can use it for hospitalization expenses, even some ad hoc medical expenses, like for example, diabetes medication and whatnot. And then there's also the special account where you mainly use it for retirement. It forms a part of your CPF CPF life. So CPF money is actually, if you were to leave it alone, it can carry on compounding till retirement. And for CPF, it will form a bedrock of your retirement income, your financial goals, medical needs. So it's very important for us to manage it actively and have a plan for it.
Right. So
why?
So I'm just gonna quickly jump in, if you don't mind. Yeah. So I think we always associate CPF with retirement adequacy, and I think that's completely true. But I'm just wondering, is CPF the only means you think by which we should rely on for retirement, or should there be other considerations for retirement? Just in your own experience.
I think it's probably wise to treat CPF as part of our retirement plans rather than our entire retirement plans, right? Because end of the day, we also have an income, and part of our income should be allocated for longer term financial goals such as retirement, right? So one way we could look at retirement planning is to maybe allocate a certain percentage of our retirement income to be attributed to CPF and CPF Life, right? So these are some of the things that you probably should have a thought process of when you are using the CPF calculator, as well as when you are doing your financial planning. Yeah.
Thanks, Shing-Shi.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, if you have any questions similar to what Lin Sing is asking, please feel free to leave it on Slido or on the YouTube chat. Okay, so on why we have created the CPF calculator. So I think a lot of it is being the person that is building the calculator, working with the developers on it, thinking about how what kind of outputs we want for it, right? I think what we realize is that existing CPF calculators out there is actually very specific in use case, right? So for example, some of those that are created are centered around very specific needs, like for example, how much additional interest you're going to get when you transfer your ordinary account monies to special account monies, right? How much accrued interest you're going to get, if you're going to give up if you were to use a CPF for housing needs, or maybe certain type of projections if you're of a certain age range when you have a certain amount within your CPF OA and SA for CPF Life, right? So these are very, very specific needs, and if you were to use the calculators, it only works under certain scenarios, right? So we find that such calculators really is meant for people who are people like myself, right? People who are like CPF geeks, people who are already very clear what they want. And what we really want to do is to understand, create a product that is understandable and useful for all CPF members, right? Be it you are someone who is totally new to CPF, and you are asking questions of like, do I have enough for retirement for just based on my CPF, right? So these are very open-ended questions that we want to help our clients, our prospective users of the calculator to be able to think about when they use the CPF calculator, right? So that is what we set out to do when we create the calculator. Also, what we want to do as well is to focus on how financial decisions can change financial outcomes, right? The what ifs, right? So what if I were to use more of my CPF for housing instead of keeping it within CPF, right? What if I were to retire later? What if I were to, for example, do an ordinary account transfer to a special account transfer, right? What if I were to invest my CPF, right? Helping our clients quantify the impact of these financial decisions and having a view of how it impacts their retirement is actually something that is, I feel, very useful for us to, take a step towards being more proactive in terms of how we manage our CPF. So this is something that we want to do with the calculator as well, right? And the last thing that we want to do with the CPF calculator is really to create something that is very, very personalized. Right. So what do I actually mean by making it personalized? It is something that takes into account where you are financially with your CPF, what you want to achieve for your financial goals in terms of your retirement age, your desired retirement income, and also maybe how much you want to invest, and then what can you get out of it. Right. So this is all very personalized outputs. It's not a generic statement. I want to be a CPF millionaire, right? But something that's very specific and unique to yourself, so that you can take action on it. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. Okay,
Sheng-Shi?
the first case. Sorry, yes.
Sorry, Sheng-Shi, just to quickly jump in, I think it's a great question from one of our audience. What is the rate of return that the calculator assumes?
Yeah. Okay, this is by Nicholas. Thanks, Nicholas, for your question. So the calculator actually assumes a measured portfolio return, balanced portfolio return, right? So what we did is that we look at a 60-40 portfolio, how have it done historically, and we basically put that return into the calculator, right? So I can pull out the figure for you later on. But I think something maybe for you to also take into account is that we don't take into account volatility when it comes to the investment returns, right? So it's a straight line, 6+%, 7+%. I think it's a 7.4% return, right? So it's a bit the investment outcome might be different because of withdrawals, right? So you just have to take note of that and to look at it more broadly in terms of like how you look at your financial plans. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the case study. So there is, so one of the key things that I think many of my friends who are in their early 30s or even early 30s or late 20s, they are considering is, do I have enough money to buy my dream home 5 years down the road? How can I better manage my CPF how does my retirement monies get impacted when I use CPF, right? So these are questions that you might be asking your girlfriend, boyfriend, when you want to settle down, and this is something that we want to help our clients or users understand when they use the calculator, right? Projecting how their CPF OA balances will be like 5 years down the road, taking into account salary growth, bonuses, as well as CPF interest, right? End of the day, CPF is used very heavily for residents as well as property investment purposes, right? So one of the key figures that's actually put out from CPF is 161 billion is actually withdrawn from CPF for HDB, right? And another 80 billion is actually withdrawn for private property, right? So I think it's very important to, for a CPF calculator to have a use case around property. And what I would like to do is to demonstrate like how can you use the calculator for property purposes, right? Okay, so these are some of the key assumptions that I would like to highlight for John, right? So John is this young adult. Definitely, I won't be naming my kid because I'm not very original with names. But when it comes to assumptions on how he looks at his financial decisions, right? He's considering like how would his financial plans be affected if you were to make a 86K down payment for housing, and if you were to make a monthly mortgage of $1,000 for 20 years. So let me just stop the presentation and go to the CPF calculator. Right, so you can actually go to the CPF calculator with the link that's shared by my colleague on the different channels. Right, you can it's a free to use. You don't have to sign up an account with Endowus to try it out. There's a lot of information on the calculator broadly, what it's about. The calculator is over here. There's these key assumptions. I think back to the question that was asked by Nicholas, okay, 7.6%, right? 7.6% on a 60-40 portfolio, right? So there is a lot of information that's down here, how you can use the CPF calculator and some frequently asked questions. Okay, so back to the scenario of John. Let me run back to the calculator. Okay, the first part of things is to take into account your personal circumstances, right? And for that, for the calculator to be accurate and to be personalized, you need to share some information about yourself. So for John specifically, we need to share more about his, where he is in terms of his salary and wealth, right? So let's assume he's born in August 1990. He earns $5,000 a month. He has a bonus of $5,000, right? So do try to use the tooltips and try to understand what it. I try to make it very simple for you, right? Okay, this is $5,000. It doesn't include the employer CPF contribution, right? We also try to make it easy because we have taken into account all the annual CPF limits and whatnot when we do the calculation of CPF contribution. So take a look at the different tooltips and key in your inputs, right? So specifically for John, he's after working for around 5 years, he have around 86K in CPF, 42K in SA, and 38K in MA, right? So this is where he is as a person, right? The next part, is about where he wants to be, right? So we have already pre-filled the information. You may not want to retire at 65. You may have to retire earlier. You may have a different requirement in terms of your retirement income. So these are something that please feel free to tweak it. If not, you can just click on next so that you understand where you are in terms of your CPF income as well as the CPF balance that you can have. Okay, so when you click next, what happens is that you get a projection on where you are financially, right? This might be a bit confusing and overwhelming for you when you first look at it, but essentially the dotted green line is your desired income after taking into account an inflation of 2%, right? So if you were not to retire yet, basically, you don't have to rely on your CPF for your retirement income. You can rely on your day-to-day salary as your income, right? At the age of 65, at the age of retirement, what happens is that we take into account two things for your retirement, right? Retirement income. So firstly, we'll see whether you are eligible to use your CPF life for a part of your retirement income, and if not, you would be able to withdraw from your SA or your OA. If you have an SA and OA balance, as long as your retirement age is after 55 years old, right? So we do take into account all of these different CPF rules when it comes to giving you advice on how to use your CPF. And that is why, if you were to be interested in this, you take a look at some of the advice or education content that is given by the calculator. You'll be able to understand a bit more in terms of where your finances are for your CPF, and how it sort of like how it can be a part of your financial planning, right? So that is how it works. So basically, you can see that for someone who have not invested their CPF, they would be able to keep on with their desired retirement income all the way until they reach the age of 85, where basically this cyan line drops down, and which means that he or she would only be able to depend on his CPF life as a form of retirement income, right? So at this stage, what happens is that the OA and SA balance have been depleted, and he or she would have to depend on CPF life, whereas someone who is investing the CPF could still withdraw from CPF, right? So if you were to look in conjunction with this withdrawable wealth projection, basically it's showing that you have withdrawn fully from your CPF, right? But if you were to invest it, you will still have some money, and maybe even grow, even though you're withdrawing your CPF. Right, so do take some time to read about this. And I think what is really interesting is that you are able to key in even more personalized information. So we spend a lot of time talking about housing requirements. Sorry, I think there's another question that I just saw from Leong. I think it's something important to
so I think
bring up.
the question is why is the calculator actually up to 54 years old? Is that true, or
Yeah,
question?
so Leong, thanks for the question. Yeah, I think this calculator, when we first built it, we want it to be for almost for everyone, but the challenge is that for those people who are past the age of 55, there are a lot of different old schemes out there, right? The RSS scheme, the retirement sum scheme, and the way their CPF life work could be very different. So we didn't really factor that. We decided to take away the options for someone to use the calculator beyond the age of 55, so that it's we are able to come up with something that is as factually accurate and something that we are comfortable with. So the short answer to this is no, the calculator is not for someone that is above the age of 55. And yeah, this is something that we hope we will be able to help some of the older CPF members in the future. Yeah, so thank you for that. Yeah.
Maybe I'll just quickly also quick feedback and question is, like I'm sure there are many in the audience who are interested in utilizing their CPF beyond a CPF calculator. So I was just wondering, especially for those who above the age of 55, would you be touching on perhaps some avenues by which some things they need to think about, if beyond the age of 55, how best they can maximize some of their excess CPF monies beyond the retirement account, what they can do about it, what are some key things that you think about. Maybe you could spend some 5 minutes when the presentation is towards the end to talk about it. Is that okay, Shing-Shi?
Yeah, sure. I can touch on that.
So stay with us. For those of us who are above the age 55, I think there are many things that we want to share as well. So do stay with us. I think it'll still be helpful for you, as well as for your children if they are below the age of 55. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Okay. So Yeah, on the calculator itself, okay. So there's this function later on where you can key in the more deeper personalized insights, right? So what happens here is that you can put in your monthly mortgage payments that you intend to pay using CPF, as well as how long your mortgage is going to be serviced, right? So this will help calculate take away the CPF withdrawals that's from mortgage, then you will be able to better understand where your CPF balance will be after taking into account how much you use for housing. Okay, so this is where you get a really personalized report. So of course, having all of this information shared online is useful, but how do you actually save a copy of this? So what we did is to have you share your information. You just key in your name, and then basically just key in some email addresses, right? So then we will send you a detailed report. Okay, so let me just pull out the detailed report for your reference, right? Just a moment. Okay, so this is the report that if you are John 1, you will be able to receive. So you get a forward from our CEO. You get basically the outputs from the calculator that you have previously seen, right? It's all a safe copy, right? I think something that's also very useful is that all the inputs that you have keyed in previously is also personalized and shared, right? And for the first questions that I touched on previously, whether you're able to afford your dream home, right? You will be able to tell where your CPF OA balance will be like 5 years ahead, right? So this has already taken into account the interest that you have earned from your CPF, the bonuses contribution from your work, the monthly salary that you have put in, right? So these are all factored in, and you probably can plan your BTO or your condo plans with your loved one if you want to settle down, right? So this is how you can use a calculator for housing plans. Right, next up, on the question on how you can use the CPF better, even if you are a CPF newbie, right? I think some of the tips, actionable tips that we really want to give people who are not very familiar with CPF is around, things like OA to SA transfer, even investing your CPF, using CPF for retirement sum topping up scheme, right? So these are information that are already provided over here. You can refer to them, right? So that is what that we can share with you, and you can use the calculator for if you're a young adult planning for your finances around buying your first home, right? I'm just going to go back to the calculator again, because just now we talked about the question on how your retirement would be impacted if we were to use a CPF for housing, right? So obviously this for John over here, he is using CPF. He's not taking into account his housing purchase when he's using CPF, right? So if you were to use CPF for housing, then wipe out his CPF OA for his down payment, right? So that is his OA balance would now be 0, right? And the next thing is that we need to factor in his monthly payment, right? So the next, he would have to key in his monthly mortgage amount, right? So this would be, let's say, $1,000 a month, as stated in the assumptions, and 20 years of mortgage servicing, right? So after keying this information, you can scroll up again. Then voila, the calculator actually updates the graph in real time, right? You can look at it. That the projections are and the comments are a bit different. You can take your time, read through it, understand it, and I think again you can generate the calculator report to your desired email address, and you would be able to receive another PDF report based on these inputs that you have keyed in, right? So it's free to use. You can use it 100 times, 1,000 times if you want to. So So let's take a look at the example of John 2, right? So what happens when he were to use the CPF calculator, taking into account his housing needs, right? So in this case, you see that his OA balance is zero because it wiped out for the down payment. There is $1,000 used for mortgage monthly, as well as a 20 years period for servicing his loan, right? So these are okay. I think at this point of time, Nicholas, thank you so much for asking your questions. Yeah, it's a very useful question. How do we have to put back the principal taken out to? Okay, I think I probably read this wrongly. So, if you were to take out you don't have to take out. The calculator assumes that you have the principal that you take out for housing is not put back in. So the money is permanently withdrawn from CPF. Right. So, yeah, that's something that you need to take note of. We don't assume that you put back the money into your CPF because that's something that makes the calculation a bit too complex. Okay, back to the calculator, right? I think what is interesting here is that you will be able to understand where your wealth and income projections will be like at retirement without investing your CPF, right? So this you can compare between you can compare between using a CPF for housing purposes and not using CPF for housing purposes. So in this case, you can see that at the age of 65, John 2 over here has around 580,000 in his CPF balance, withdrawable, right? But for John 2, what happens is that if you were to go to the same page, he would have 1.2 million in his CPF, and that is because of the $86,000 that's withdrawn for housing. That is because of the $1,000 monthly that's being withdrawn for mortgage payments, and that is also because of the lost interest from CPF OA, right? So all of these plays a part in the reduction in withdrawable CPF balance at retirement, right? So it answers the question on do I have enough for CPF? And I think
just a quick question from the audience from the Slido. So someone commented that some of the projections for the Medisave are quite high, but Medisave actually has a cap. The basic health sum is currently at 63,000. So we just wanted to clarify on that.
Yeah, that is actually a great question. So I think the answer to that is, we need to make an assumption on how, not just how the Medisave would grow, but also how the FRS would grow, right? So the government do frequently revise some of these figures. So if you were to go back to the calculator itself, we do share some of these projections and assumptions of the calculator. Let me just go to the disclaimer page. Yeah. So for example, right, the BHS as well as the FRS, we have an assumption based on how the government has historically revised the FRS numbers as well as the BHS number, right? So based on the past, it's around 5% thereabout. Some years is higher, some years is lower. For FRS, it's around 3%, right? Can we guarantee that it's 3% or 5%? The answer is no. But this is, I think, a fair assumption on how the BHS as well as the FRS would grow in the future. Yeah. So thanks for the question on this. Okay, going back to the explanation for using your calculator for retirement, right? So if you were to use using CPF for housing needs, sorry. So if you were to use CPF for housing needs, you'll be able to tell that, okay, you will be a bit sort of less prepared for retirement because your CPF balance is less, right? But at least you know that, okay, well, I would still be able to get the CPF, I'll still be able to hit the FRS, right? If you were to read the description, you will still be able to hit FRS at 45 years old. You would still be able to rely on CPF Life for around 38% of your desired income based on our projections. And also we get a projection on when your CPF account would run out of money at retirement, right? So these are information that you can rely on to do your financial plans. And then, I just want to take a step back here and talk about, the what ifs. How can you manage your CPF better? How can you change some of your financial decisions using some of the information that is provided, right? So we also let you understand the concrete actionable steps on how you can use the calculator or how you can tweak your financial plans to grow your CPF better, right? I think we talk about Minister Tan trying to make it more attractive for Singaporeans to work beyond the retirement age. So this is probably something that is not top of mind, but we can retire later, and by retiring later, we draw down on our CPF nest egg later, and we also have a bit more years when it comes to CPF contribution, right? So if you look at this, you get an idea of how your CPF withdrawable balance would increase when you delay your retirement. So if you were to delay by 2 years, you have another addition around 50K more. If you were to delay by 10 years, you get around another 180K more, right? So these are some of the figures that we provide so that you understand how your financial outcome can change because of some of the financial plans that you make, right? So that is one aspect of how we try to give some insights on how your financial plans can change your retirement outcome, right? The other way is definitely to look at investing your CPF OA, and this not just limits and looks at the CPF OA that can be invested on a monthly basis, but also on your year-end bonuses, right? So over here, it may seem that you may not be able to invest a huge amount on a monthly basis, right? But we do take into account the additional cash or CPF monies that is contributed into your OA when you want to invest your CPF, right? And again, you will be able to tell how your withdrawable balance can grow beyond the base case, right, which is that $576,000, and you will be able to tell how long your CPF withdrawable balance can last more, right, beyond the base case. So again, it's to help you sort of quantify and have a feel of how making better, how tweaking your financial plans can lead to better outcomes. And of course, I think the most important point is, if you were to use more cash instead of CPF for your mortgage, what are the outcomes, right? Then again, we do some projections, and you get to see how that impacts your retirement wealth and how long your CPF can last. Okay, so basically that is for the young adult. Let me just run through the slides again. I think there should be some questions on the calculator. Let me just take a look at it. Okay, there's a question by Anon that is upvoted. Does the calculator take into account of the bonus 1% on the first 60K of CPF balance? The answer is yes. So it takes into account the additional 1% and also the additional 1% for those who are beyond the age of 55. There's a question on, is the calculator accurate? How far is it from my actual CPF outcome? So that's a great question. The answer to it actually is, we cannot, we try to be as accurate as possible, right? So there are things that are public information that we build into the calculator, things like the additional interest, the 2.5%, 4% interest, all of these are factored in, as well as the breakdown between the 37% CPF contribution between employers and employees, how it breaks down into OA, SA, MA. Those are all factored into the calculator, right? But there are definitely assumptions on CPF interest rates, investment returns that we have built into the calculator that will affect your real outcome, right? So those are something that we are not able to, that will always be a variable, yeah. So we can't guarantee that OA SA interest will remain the same way as it is. Okay, so there's a question on, I have money in OA, SA, and RA. Was told that there's a way to draw interest from both OA and SA concurrently. Is this correct? Okay, so I understand, there is an order to how, withdrawal from CPF actually works. Generally speaking, it's SA first, then OA. But, between CPF, contribution from work, between CPF interest earned, accrued interest for the year, right? All of these are things that could potentially be could be received first, even before you draw down the shown CPF balance. That's what I heard. I think it's better for you to reach out to CPF for a more concrete answer, because these are not publicly available information. Yeah. Okay, so there's this question on when will dimensional funds be available for CPF OA to invest. The answer is, we are still working with dimensional on this, so you will hear from us very soon when it's available, right? Yeah, this is something that we are still working on. Okay, let's run back to the presentation. For someone who is financially stable, planning for retirement, some of the questions that you will be asking is, can I retire earlier? Can I hit my full retirement sum at an earlier age, right? How does CPF Life sort of fall into my own early retirement plans? And how much can I get from CPF Life for my monthly income, right? So these are the questions that you'll be looking out for. And I think maybe let me just not run through the calculator input again. I'll just go straight into the output for Mary, right? So Mary is someone who is older, right? Born in 1980s in August, right? She has a different income from John, right? OA and SA balance all are different, right? You realize that the calculator actually sort of like force block any inputs of MA that's beyond the $63,000. So these are the small things that we do to make sure that our clients or people who are using the calculator don't key in the wrong inputs, right? So you can see she has a very specific, these are again very personalized, right? And you can see from this calculator that hey, she actually already hit the BHS at the currently, right? And she'll be able to hit the FRS, the projected FRS rather, 3 years later. Right, so these are some useful tidbits of information that you can use to help with your financial plans, right? And there is also some information on how much you can do a OA to SA transfer, whether you can do a retirement sum topping up, and this the later table over here would show how much retirement income that you can get based on the existing FRS, right, on a standard plan, right? So you can see that there's a lot of information here on how much monthly income you're supposed to get, what's the assumption behind. Do read through it, and also how much money is coming from the various CPF accounts. Right, so again, read through the information. You will be able to understand where you stand in terms of your retirement plans using the CPF calculator. So basically, that's it, right? What you should do next. So that I've talked a lot around the calculator and a lot of the functions and features that are available. I think the most important thing is that it seems like there's a lot of things that you can do and a lot of things for you to understand with the calculator. But I think getting started is very important, right? So do try out the calculator, see where you stand in terms of our financial plans, and then you would be able to basically take some ideas from the calculator and make some key financial decisions around very key personal big plans, right? So for example, housing decision with your CPF, right? So that has a huge impact on your financial plans. Whether you stay in a condo, whether you get a BTO, whether you get a resale. So those have a very, very different type of capital outlay for you. And so you should see how those kind of plans actually affect and impact your retirement. So that's one thing to take note of. Right. And of course, investing your CPF is also a very critical part of your plans, right? So it may not seem like a huge sum of money if you were to invest maybe $300 or $400 a month, every month, right? But if you were to do that consistently over 20 or 30 years, then that small amount of money would add up in terms of the capital invested, right? And then the power of compounding would also really have a huge impact over a long period of time. So these are like the key decisions that you can make and also understand and quantify using the calculator, right? Then of course, do read the content that's written on the report that's personalized for you. You can understand how what are some of the immediate things that you can do, like OA to SA transfer, retirement sum top up that can help boost your CPF balances. Because end of the day, CPF is giving a very great, 4% interest if you were to do have more money in your special account, for example. Right. Then, of course, I think the last resort, the thing that all of us want to avoid is to be forced to retire later. Right. So if you were to really have a very aggressive retirement plan, like you want to retire at 40 years old, 50 years old, put that in, see how it goes, and then you'll be able to tell, where are you relative to your, financial independence, retire early dreams. So that is also something that will be insightful. Yeah. Okay. So we do have a goal to update the calculator yearly based on policy changes, based on changes in the FRS, BHS. So do try the calculator yearly and review your financial goals, plans. When you buy a house, maybe you have a huge outflow of your CPF OA balance. Do update and run that report. It's personalized and free to use, and you can use that as a guidance, right? And we will make sure that it's abreast to the latest CPF information.
Yeah, just a quick question. There's another question on the calculator. I'll just show it for everyone. Does the calculator take into account personal tax? So gross monthly salary would be before tax.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. How we look at this calculator is really financial planning only around CPF, right? So we actually don't. It's not so important what is your post-tax monies, right? Because end of the day, all of your CPF contribution is pre-tax money, right? So any contribution is pre-tax. We don't take into account I think in the first place, we don't take into the government don't care about how much is your tax before you contribute a CPF, right? So that's a short answer. Yeah. So I think the answer to that question is really, CPF contribution has already sort of like not taken into account what type of tax you are paying. So it's all right. Yeah.
That's great. I think it's a lot that we covered, Sheng-Shi. I think as we come up to 8 o'clock, I think what will be helpful, I think for those in the audience is if you can give some maybe one or two quick takeaways for those below the age of 55, and maybe one or two quick takeaways for those above age 55, just to sort of sum up some of the key points that you have mentioned.
Yeah, so thanks for listening in. For those who are below 55, there's there's so many things that you can do with your CPF, right? So I think the most important thing is don't end up like the people that we have surveyed in our retirement report, right? They are aware that there's a lot of use for CPF, but they are not actually actively using CPF for those purposes. Right, so make sure that try out the calculator, try out some of these different CPF tricks. And I think the very good thing about CPF is that you can do a $1 OA to SA transfer just to try it out, right? You can take out $1 from your CPF if you are past the 55 years old. So just get started on managing your CPF actively. Don't be scared to use your CPF just because it's giving a very, very attractive interest rate, right? So that's for those who are younger. And for those who are older, I guess, again, there are a lot of other tricks and tips that, they are available, right? I think the most important thing is definitely not to be hasty when it comes to withdrawing a CPF, because as we shared previously, right, the CPF becomes like a high yield savings account, right? You're not going to get 2.5%, 4% without doing anything, without jumping through the hoops with like credit card spends, investment spends that you need with some of these, high yield savings account that the banks give, right? So keep the money within CPF, and I think all of us are living longer, right? So you can still keep your CPF investments within CPF, right? Because beyond 55, there's still another 30-40 years that you can stay invested in. So that is something that I think would make a very some of the quick tips that I have for our viewers who are a bit older.
I mean, maybe I'll just quickly chime in on some of my own thoughts. I think the below the age of I think for all ages, I think the key takeaway for me since I've joined Endowus, as well as just basically just having Xingxi as a friend and a colleague, is that we are now empowered to have more information about CPF, and we can make decisions that are in the best interest for ourselves, right? So don't use not knowing how to navigate the CPF system as a excuse to not do better for yourself. I think there is a lot of helpful material, such as today's webinar. There's a lot of helpful material on our financial blog, endowus.com/insights, whereby you are able to find the best, some of best tips by which to maximize how you can use your CPF either for investments or maximize your yield or just plan for retirement. There's so much more information out there. Reach out to our financial advisors at support@endowus.com if you need some help in navigating that. Right, if you haven't already opened an Endowus account with us, I think it's a great time to start today. We are the only digital advisor whereby you are able to invest your CPF in a globally diversified portfolio that is low cost. I know a lot of people don't know that they can actually do that with their CPF OA money. So you are able to do that with your CPF OA monies, right? So that's all from me. Xingxi?
Yeah, I'm just going to quickly run through some of the other questions that I see on Slido.
Yep.
Okay, so let me just take a look. If I have made investments using OA, SA as well as cash, would it still make sense to use cash to pay for a mortgage rather than OA? I think end of the day, it really depends on how your financial plans. I wouldn't, you can, if you so the thing about using cash for your to pay for your mortgage rather than OA is, what's the opportunity cost for your cash, right? So for younger adults, they would have many more needs for their expenses. So for example, if you are like Lin Sing, you want to start a family, then you would maybe want to spend more money on milk powder and things like that, right? But if you are someone who is older, who already have your financial plan set out, then you may want to keep more within your CPF. So this is really a very personal question. I think, yeah, probably wouldn't go beyond that. Okay. Okay, you were mentioning that at a certain age, CPF monies will be used up. Is this referring to balance in SA and OA only? So that is right. It is only SA and OA only. We didn't take into account MediSave because that's you cannot access it anyway, right? Beyond certain extreme medical circumstances, and also we also exclude CPF Life because that it's basically a premium that you have already paid for annuity income. So we excluded that for that purpose. Right. There is a question by Caden. Thank you, Caden, for the question. Can you help to explain what's taken out from OA to invest? Is it okay? So that 25% is actually 25% of your existing CPF OA balance, as well as the future monthly contributions, right? Be it your bonus as well as your monthly income. Yeah. So it's meant to be all of your contributions and your existing balances. Just realized you are Shang-Chi's brother. Yeah. Thanks for that question. Okay, I think there's another question by Anon. What's the composition of the balanced portfolio of 60/40 portfolio? I think we don't have it's meant to sort of like share with you what a 60/40 portfolio can get with that 7.6% return, right? It's not so much about what is it exactly invested in. So I think you should take reference against the 7.6% instead. Okay, I think we have basically touched on all the question on Slido. I'm just going to quickly take a look at question by Jensen. Is there plans to integrate SRS Cash CPF into a holistic retirement calculator? Yes, it's something that is actually pretty challenging, right? So let's take a look at the Slido poll here. I think when I was building the calculator, I realized that this is actually something that is very, very, very complex, right? There needs to be someone needs to be very interested in to look at this, and we will have to explain it in detail if you are not not somewhat familiar with CPF or not somewhat familiar, motivated to know about CPF, right? I think it's possible for us to build something like a holistic retirement calculator that you can use for across SRS, CPF, and cash. But I think there also needs to be that reciprocal relationship and that reciprocal effort from our clients to understand what goes into the calculator, what's the assumption behind, and how they can use it for their financial planning, right? So I think the CPF calculator, I think it's a commitment. It's a sign of commitment from our end that we want to build something like this, and we would love to gather more feedback from our clients on how they feel we can build a better calculator, right? So if you have any questions on the CPF calculator or any feedback, right, please go to CPF calculator at endowus.com. Let us know so we can do something that is even more, something that's more user-friendly and something that you guys would love to use. Okay, I think going back to the poll quickly, I think everyone seems like most people want a more personalized advice for their profile, right? So, yep, thanks for that. I think that's something for us to take back and consider. Anyway, we've come to the end of today's presentation. Thank you so much for staying with us. Thanks, Lin Sing, for moderating and chatting with our clients.
No problem. It's
Any last
great
words?
pleasure. No, I'll just say, everyone's unique financial situation is very unique. Unfortunately, we won't be able to provide much more detailed, tailored advice on the chat, which is understandable. But do reach out to us at support@endowus.com. Myself and my team of advisors will be happy to provide tailored advice to your unique circumstances, right? So do reach out to us. I'll just put it down on the chat. It's support@endowus.com. Do reach out to us. And again, the last plug, if you have yet to open an account with Endowus, today is probably the best day to do so. So do that. And pass the time back to Sheng-Shi.
Yeah, thank you everyone. Have a great evening ahead. Good night.